How's it going, everybody? Over the last few years while covering this game, I've often been asked to cover strategy or tactics kind of topics. What are the best rotations and whatnot? And to be honest, while there were some basic ideas and theories floating around, well, not just that, they were also employed in matches, but they were also so basic that it wouldn't have been nearly enough to cover a whole video. Go pick Nobushi, never leave mid, and just kill soldiers. There you go, mid lane explained. That's what it was back then. Overall, For Honor isn't the game that draws in its audience because of its strategical elements. Don't get me wrong, it definitely has these elements, but I guarantee you that everybody who starts playing this game does so because of the fighting. We are a fighting game first and foremost, and then some MOBA elements sprinkled in, but you can see this in everyday matchmaking. People want to fight, they don't really care for an overarching plan. Go in, press buttons, feed revenge, complain, and rinse repeat. To put it nicely, there is an overall lack of understanding of what you're supposed to do outside of the very rudimentary concept of capture a zone and gain points. Like I said, for most people the fighting is what makes them launch the game. Compared to MOBAs, the fighting in these games is just, well, let's stick with the nice thing. It's basic. There is very little counterplay to 18-second crowd control in Dota or getting right-clicked by a Fed ADC in League. But both of these games can almost be played without killing anybody. The objectives on the map are enough to secure a victory, with minimal blood spilled. And For Honor can be played like that as well, but nobody wants to, and neither do I. But this doesn't mean that the other part is not important. So first of all, if you're new to all of this, we will define two things: micro game and macro game. Micro is the fighting in For Honor. You fight your 1v1 somewhere, and it's about that very fight. Lights, heavies, blocks, parries, whatever. That is the micro game. It's the fact that you do fight. Nobody cares why you fight. But that is the macro game. The reason why you fight that specific person at that specific moment at that specific location. The plan behind it all. I will be using these terms from now on, so I hope I made it clear what I mean with it. Let me know if it's not. So we are tackling two things today. The first is map openness, and then point priority. Basically, where you should run when you just respawned or finished the fight. But let me make one thing very clear. This is not some ultimate, you always need to do this or that in every situation where A or B happened. All of this is just supposed to give you an idea about the theoretical, quote-unquote, best approach. So many additional factors play a role, and it's impossible for me to cover them all. Well, not just for me, in general, I guess. But alright, map openness then. These can be roughly divided into the two types of maps we have. The maps that have a clear home point, and the maps that have an equal travel time for both teams for each capture point. The maps with a home point are pretty straightforward. One team member captures the home point, whereas the remaining three, they go mid. The importance of the midpoint, for that I've made a whole video some time ago. Just as a little reminder, the displayed numbers in the top right of how many points your team gets for holding these are a little misleading. The actual values for these are as follows. We are looking at 0.74 points per second for an unboosted zone. 1.85 points per second for a boosted zone. And only holding the minion lane gives 1.35 points per second. What is shown in-game are rounded numbers. Holding and actively farming mid generates many more points than many people give it credit for. For all the details about minion spawn behavior, the amount that spawns and much more, please check out the video from back then. Should pop up now. I am very well aware that things like the attacker orders will throw a wrench into that plan. I've said this repeatedly that orders should be something that can be completed organically, without anyone having to alter their playstyle significantly. I'm not saying that the attacker order is necessarily that, but players certainly do treat it like that. But that's a topic for another day. So, you are now mid, and your goal is to push out the minions and win that team fight. If the opposing team didn't send an equal amount of players, this should mean that you can capture mid almost uncontested and force the fight in the middle of your own minions. They might not do a ton of damage, but it does add up over time. The other type of map is where there is usually one clear point that is more important than the other. Funnily enough, it's most often the C point. It usually has a faster rotation speed towards mid and allows for easier heals and cycling out of players in teamfights. As that point has priority, most teams send 2 players to capture it at the beginning of a match. Strong 2v2 characters are preferred here. Warlord, Kensei, Nobushi and so on. Your other 2 players once again go mid because of the previously mentioned point generation of the minion lane. The other capture point is often neglected and captured once a team fight is won and a team member can be spared. Priority should still be to get the more important point and mid. Winning on either of the 2 locations allows for reinforcements on the other, and as explained before, the distance between the 2 is usually quite short. But you can also do the total opposite here. Let's say your team is not confident enough to win the 2v2 on the important point. Then you can once again send 3 people mid and 1 person to the off point. This gives you a push advantage in mid and a better team fight, as the other team has to respect the numerical advantage in mid. It also means that reinforcements are on the way, right after the off point has been captured. Now it's about stopping heals and winning the big team fight in mid that is about to ensue. Well then, what to do later in a match, once the momentum of a match has been established? The point priority usually goes like this then. First is your own home point, or in general, any point that you currently hold. If it gets contested, this is a chance for your team to take advantage of Defender Renown. I've made a separate video on this recently, and if you're not familiar with it, I urge you to have a look. It is an important aspect and one of the reasons why you want to fight on a point that is held by your team. Once again, there might be many other things going on the map that require your attention. This is just a guideline that you can follow, so don't blindly run into any fight that is happening on one of your points. Then, if you are in the unfortunate scenario of being triple capped, then your best bet is mid. Same as when you have taken back your home point or successfully defended it. Mid is a point that you can take without having to kill anybody. You can chip away at the minions and eventually force it to go back to neutral. This will also force opposing players off the other zones and stop the boosting, as you have a numbers advantage in the mid fight. And then third on the priority list are enemy held points. Once again, think Defender Renown. If you push on their point, you better be very confident that you can win that fight, because if you give up multiple kills, this can lead to a massive Renown lead for the other team. And Renown lead means feat advantage. You don't want to have to face Fury Flasks or Umbral Shelters early on. The opportunities to backcap also derive from that. How many opponents are dead? How quickly can they send someone to stop the cap or contest straight after? By leaving for a backcap, do you leave your team in a disadvantageous position? In matchmaking, you often see players go straight for the backcap every single time they respawn, without any regard to what is actually happening on the map. Sometimes it works, other times it horribly backfires. Most don't give much thought to it and just blame it on a lost 1v1 or getting ganked. But they don't ask why they were getting ganked. Which brings me back to my initial premise. For Honor's fighting system is the main draw for many of its players. Straight up winning fights oftentimes is enough to just win a match. It is also usually easier to make a quote-unquote good decision when you are in the lead or winning. The whole strategical element or macro game plays second, even third fiddle for most. So let me repeat it once more, what I've laid out today are only guidelines. Many factors can play a role when it comes to decisions in a specific scenario. Still, I hope it all made sense to you and you can start employing this in your own games. Communication is key, so inform your teammates about your next moves as well. Let me know how it goes. For now, I hope the video was helpful. Thanks for watching. Laters everybody.